HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents I'm Never Drinking Again. How to Stop Drinking So Much and Change Your Relationship with Alcohol, by Dominic McGregor. Read by Gerrard. Limit of liability, disclaimer of warranty. While the publisher and authors have used their best efforts in preparing this work, they make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents of this work, and specifically disclaim all warranties, including without limitation any implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales representatives, written sales materials, or promotional statements for this work. This work is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering professional services. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for your situation. You should consult with a specialist where appropriate. The fact that an organization, website, or product is referred to in this work as a citation and/or potential source of further information does not mean that the publisher and authors endorse the information or services the organization, website, or product may provide, or recommendations it may make. Further, readers should be aware that websites listed in this work may have changed or disappeared between when this work was written and when it is read. Neither the publisher nor authors shall be liable for any loss of profit or any other commercial damages, including, but not limited to special, incidental, consequential, or other damages. Preface. On the 24th of July 2013, I made a decision in my life to go sober. This wasn't a decision I wanted to make. It was a decision I had to make. I had founded a company at the age of 19 with Steve Bartlett, now of Dragon's Den, and The Diary of a CEO. We were working with the likes of Disney, Spotify, and Microsoft, and we were one of the fastest-growing, most exciting companies in the United Kingdom. I couldn't handle the pressure, so I decided to drink to numb the pain that this was creating in me. After months of managing to hide my alcohol dependency, I ran into a number of problems, all self-created, which meant I almost lost everything: the business, my friends, my family, my partner, now wife, everything I spent my life working for. Like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, I was a 23-year-old who had played with fire too much and was left with no option but to make a change in my life. So, at 23 years old, after an intense period of therapy, I tried going sober. The first few thoughts that entered my mind after making this decision were centered on how my life was going to look without being able to drink or go out. Up to this point, I had experienced life and alcohol through a very narrow lens. This felt like a huge change, and I was uncertain about how it would work. At the date of publication, I am 30 years old and 7 years sober. I have now officially spent more time in recovery than I was ever legally allowed to drink. In that time, I have managed to take my company to the public markets, listing it on the German Stock Exchange, as well as start my second business, host a TEDx talk, win countless awards, invest in over 20 companies, and marry my best friend. Removing alcohol from my life has allowed me to reach my full potential and grow into a person whose life is rich with friends and meaningful relationships, and who has hope for the future. While alcohol has become a social norm in much of the Western world, and many people believe they have a healthy relationship with it, it is still an addictive drug. What is insidious about it is that when life is good and stress is low, you are able to enjoy it carefree. During those times, when the hangovers don't take days to get over, when the anxiety in the morning is manageable, when your body bounces back, it's all okay. No one in those situations would admit that their relationship with alcohol is negative. But our relationship with any addictive substance is deeply rooted and can swiftly change when circumstances around you do. I'm fortunate to have gone through what I did at 23 years old. The strain of running a business with over 100 people at that young age artificially increased my dependency on alcohol and effectively fast-tracked me into having serious issues. My issues with alcohol happened at 23. However, without addressing the underlying issues around my relationship with alcohol, These issues could have appeared at 33 or 43, as I never questioned my relationship with alcohol until it became a problem. This book is for everyone who can enjoy a drink, to help you understand any current or future warning signs. It's for everyone waking up with a hangover on a Sunday morning and thinking to themselves, "I'm never drinking again." There is a shared experience for many who have gone sober. Most people have a rock bottom that acts as their wake-up call, and I was no different. What I learned when I hit my rock bottom was that the answer for me was sobriety. It was the only option I had. Not everyone is like me. There are others who can manage this relationship better. My relationship with alcohol, however, was so bad that it had to end. I have experience in staying in relationships too long, and I end up doing significant damage to myself. If you're anything like me, think to yourself, do I have a healthy relationship with alcohol? Do I have a healthy relationship with stress and anxiety? Is my mental health okay? What do I do in those situations when I don't feel well? Do I reach for the glass of wine too quickly? The debate around alcohol has shifted in the past 7 years, the time I've been sober. At 23 years old, I told my friends that I was never drinking again, and they looked at me as if I'd just insulted their entire family with some senseless joke. It was a statement no one believed, partly because of who I was, but also because it was very rare. 7 years later, I've been exposed to the sober community, which is full of wonderful men and women from all over the world, and from so many backgrounds. I've never felt so welcomed. Now, at 30 years old, I'm frequently told by peers, strangers on the internet, and those closest to me, that they wished they could stop drinking, but it's become too ingrained within their life. I've also experienced firsthand the damage alcohol can do to families and relationships, having been a drunken disgrace previously. I now witness that with people close to me, who don't know when enough is enough. This has led me to write this book, sharing some of my experiences, the experiences of others in the sober world, and my learnings from going from someone who had a stable, loving upbringing by an incredible mum and dad, alongside a solid private school education, to a 20-year-old Jack the Lad, to a 30-year-old sober husband. It's my heartfelt wish that my experience and tough lessons learned will help anyone who might need to change their relationship with alcohol too. Chapter 1. Top of the Slope. I'll never forget the day when I felt like I had completed life. It was the 26th of September 2015. I'd just flown into New York to attend the UN's Global Goal Festival, which Beyoncé, Ed Sheeran and Coldplay were headlining. I'd been invited by a major venture capitalist investor who had invested early in the music platform Spotify. This was the world 22-year-old me was living in. A world of investors, business-class flights, top hotels and amazing food. This was probably the 4th time I had been to New York that year. We were considering opening up an office in the United States for our company, so the trip had a real purpose behind it. This was going to be our 3rd office location and, in time, hopefully our biggest. I'd fallen in love with New York when I first saw it as a 19-year-old. There was a special feeling about seeing the lights in Times Square at 4 a.m. after flying down 5th Avenue drunk in the back of a yellow taxicab, which I believed were just from the movies, until I travelled to the United States. The next few times I visited, I began to fall in love with Central Park and other areas of the city more occupied by locals than tourists. At 22, I felt a strange feeling of belonging, being comfortable in New York, knowing my way around, and starting to feel like it was home. So, on the 26th of September, here I stood, at the top of my slope, unaware of what the months ahead held. As the day started, I woke up in the city that doesn't sleep after a glorious business-class flight into New York. I was staying in a 5-star hotel just off Central Park. My business partner Steve and I had been invited to the Global Citizen concert, and we were in the VIP section. Because the concert was in Central Park, there was no alcohol allowed in the regular areas. I think if I'd had a normal invite, I would have politely declined. The ability to drink and party was a major pull. We arrived at 12, walking past the strawberry fields, the tribute to Beatle John Lennon. A nice little reminder of the power that music has to move people. Ultimately, we were out of place here. Two young British entrepreneurs in New York at this global event. The speakers included Leonardo DiCaprio and Michelle Obama, and it was hosted by Hugh Jackman and Olivia Wilde. This was the day of days. It felt like everyone who was anyone would be at this event. They'd be in the VIP section, and more than likely at some point we'd see them. So we infiltrated the bar and began to give ourselves a bit of Dutch courage. It was here that I started seeing people I recognized. I caught sight of a beautiful woman with long ginger hair. I was sure I knew her, and I was pretty sure she was British, but I couldn't place her. Google didn't let me down. Bingo! Bonnie Wright, who played Ginny Weasley in the Harry Potter movies. Slightly starstruck, I took a bit more Dutch courage to navigate the occasion. Bonnie Wright was a big name, but she was far from the only one. Turning around to see Jaden Smith and the real-life Winklevoss twins, who inspired my entrepreneurial journey in the movie Social Network, really blew my mind. The alcohol flowed to give me the confidence to be around these people. I felt like an imposter. My mind was racing. What am I doing here with these people? I'm just a young guy from York. This doesn't happen to other 22-year-olds. This is wild. I knocked back another drink to quieten the thoughts running around in my head. The day continued with talks from major world players. We watched Coldplay open the show from the VIP section, which was literally 10 yards away from the stage. Behind me, 60,000 New Yorkers were thoroughly enjoying their day, despite being unable to get a drink. While at the bar, I looked at the TV and noticed Leonardo DiCaprio on stage giving his speech. I hadn't realized he would be here. I turned to Steve in disbelief and asked, "Is that here? Is this live?" He said, "I think so." Something came over me and I said, "I'm going to find him." I had an irrational determination to find Leonardo DiCaprio. I had no idea how I'd do that. I had no idea what I'd do when I did, but I became fixated with this quest. So I set off. During the show, I'd seen a small gate with two rather large security guards. By now, I was well on my way, and my drunken conclusion was that there was probably a VVIP area, or green room where the performers and speakers would be. This gate seemed to me like the logical target. If I could infiltrate it, I might find Leo. I knew my time was limited. It wouldn't be long until he was off stage and more than likely heading somewhere else. People like him do not hang around for long. I made a beeline for the gate, approaching the security guards with the utmost confidence, covering my wristband with my sleeves so they wouldn't see what category of guest I was. I walked up, head held high, and without being asked a single question, walked past them and into the other behind-stage location. Steve followed me. Part of me felt like we had done it, we had made it. As we stepped into the backstage area, Leonardo DiCaprio was coming off stage, surrounded by security guards. Noel Gallagher right in front of me. I came within touching distance of Leonardo, manoeuvred between his security guards, reached out my hand, and stroked his arm. What a crazy guy I was. Who did I think I was, stroking Leonardo DiCaprio? He didn't even really seem to notice. I was buzzing. The day continued and the alcohol continued to flow. We partied with huge A-listers like Jay-Z, Kanye West and Chris Rock, but the highlight for me was following the Prime Minister of Japan into his green room. It was a total blag. As he came off stage, I joined his security guard, who were all Japanese, dressed in suits, and holding shoulders to form a human shield. In my purple jumper and jeans, I didn't think I'd get away with it. But I joined the back of the train, and when a guard asked, "Are you with them?" I confidently said, "Yes." Now, what I learned was not only was the security terrible, but that drinking gave me a deluded confidence. I was probably close to committing a few felonies, or at least breaking some international law that day. But not for a second did I think about that. I was just thinking, this is the life. This is what you're supposed to be doing at 22 when you've built this business. Little did I know then that this was far from what I was supposed to be doing. Before this, I was always a drinker, someone who would have fun. I remember the end-of-year awards when your school year voted for the most likely to do X and Y. We had the usual categories: most likely to be on Spotify, most likely to write a book, which I would have probably been bottom of, and most likely to be a spy, the usual trivial things that 18-year-olds go for. The award that I proudly won, most likely to be drunk right now. That was me, a lad. In the intervening 4 years, little had changed. On the 26th of September 2015, aged 22, I reached the peak of my alcoholic adventures. From that day on, every day slowly unravelled in my life, and the journey to rock bottom, to a place of nothing but pure personal torture, had begun. Ascending the slope. Being a VIP at a high-profile event in New York was a very long way from my first home, Old York. After the house parties and turning 18, I managed to scramble my way to university to study sports science. Not that I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I knew for sure that I'd love to work in sports. I'd always loved sports, and when choosing a course to study, I thought about the old saying, if you do something you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life. This was probably the main bit of life advice I wanted to follow. I believe I went to university well-rounded. University is the first time a lot of people have the freedom and opportunity to live their lives. Away from the watching eyes of parents, many people begin to find themselves and experiment. From my point of view, I'd already done a lot of that while in my late teens. I would say that I was an early drinker. My first alcoholic drink was at my dad's 40th birthday party. At that party there were WKD Alcopops, which were the craze at the time, the ones that looked like fruit juice. I was 13, a month away from my 14th birthday, and way below the legal drinking age, but being surrounded by my older cousins, who were at the time 16, 17, and 18 years old, I was able to steal a taste of my first drink. You might think there's nothing unusual in that, but the age at which you begin consuming alcoholic drinks is more important than you probably realize. Studies show people who begin drinking before age 15 are 4 times more likely to become alcohol dependent at some time during their life, compared with those who have their first drink at age 21 or older. There I was, unaware that I had increased my chances of becoming addicted by 400% just for a bright blue drink and a bit of fun at a family party. University saw me proudly continue this trend. I was a great, fun drunk. There have been many nights of serious fun. The nights you reminisce about with your friends when you get together. Days when you're strolling home with a pizza and hearing the birds start to sing. But you know it isn't an issue because tomorrow you do not have a lecture until 3 p.m. On those days, you genuinely know you can sleep in till 2 p.m, and even then missing that lecture isn't the end of the world. University is fun. At least it was for me. You take yourself out of your comfort zone to a new city. Little me from York could pack his bags and move 200 miles to Edinburgh, get away from parents' watching eyes and their judgment, and start to live the life I wanted to. The life I wanted included the achievement of taking Fleetwood Town to the Premier League title on FIFA 12 by 2023, well over 24 hours of gameplay. Sorry to all the shrimpers out there, but now in 2023, Fleetwood are no closer to the Premier League than they were back in 2013. Those 10 years have flown by, but the good old days do quickly disappear, and so does our ability to bounce back from the hangovers and anxiety of the mornings after. I'm comfortable, yet somewhat crazy, maybe, to admit that I never felt anxious, depressed, or really in touch with my emotions at university or school. This has been a common trait amongst my male peers. We don't talk to people, we bottle things up, and we don't tend to show emotion. As a young male, this can be very damaging as it means we are unable to process and therefore handle things around us. Growing up is always difficult, and as we transition from childhood to adulthood, we have a lot to learn. All of this development is overseen by our brains. Issues with alcohol. Our brains don't fully develop until we're around 25. This applies regardless of gender. However, there is also research to suggest that the process of reorganizing connections in our brains, which is what leads to maturity, begins earlier in women than in men. The simple truth is that adult and teenage brains function differently. While adults engage their prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational center, during thinking processes, teenagers do not possess the same level of development in this area. When viewed from the perspective of neuroscience, it's easy to see the hazards of alcohol consumption among anyone under the age of 25. When we take this alongside the fact that female brains tend to develop earlier than male ones, it offers a potential explanation as to why it's often boys we remember doing stupid things at school. As puberty starts, female brains jump to at least 2 years older than their physical age. Males, however, usually take until their late teen years or even early 20s to match their female peers' mental age. With a more mature brain than men, women tend to have a stronger sense of responsibility sooner than men. Throughout the stages of adolescence and early adulthood, the brain undergoes a series of transformations, establishing neural connections, trimming unused pathways, and refining regions accountable for functions such as decision-making, impulse control, and strategic planning. These transformative processes intricately contribute to the cognitive and emotional growth of an individual. This means that when we're under 25, certain cognitive functions linked to mature decision-making, risk assessment, and impulse control aren't functioning at what is considered an adult level. This has consequences for behaviors like alcohol and substance use, propensity for risk-taking, and overall decision-making. We're treated as adults at 18, but for many of us our brains have another 7 years of development ahead of them. Throwing alcohol into the mix alongside an undeveloped brain explains why so many nights out tend to include young men fighting in the streets or jumping off bridges. It explains why men tend to be the ones doing stupid stuff while drunk. One study among 15 and 16-year-old students in Ireland found that 19% of young men admitted to being in a fight when drunk, 17% have been injured, and 23% have lost property. The statistics do not lie. Drinking leads to problems. Despite this, the world seems to love alcohol. There is a cult-like protection around alcohol that other toxics and drugs do not experience. For example, I have never been questioned about why I do not smoke. We are all aware of the danger of smoking, which is legal, yet people choose to do it. No one questions someone else's rights to choose not to smoke, and no one walks around sticking a cigarette in your mouth saying, "Get it down you." No one panics around Tesco looking for a present to buy their friends on their 21st and rushes to the cigarette aisle to buy them a 20-pack. No one says to people during a hard week at work, "You need to smoke an entire pack of fags. That'll make you forget all the shit you've been through." I hope most of you are like me and think that the previous idea sounds a bit icky, a bit socially unacceptable and grotesque. There was a time when cigarettes were glorified, when claims were made that they were healthy for you. Back in the 1950s and 1960s, advertising very often pushed health claims about cigarettes. One such example was Marshall's Cubeb cigarettes, claiming to be a sure remedy for asthma, nasal congestion, and the common cold. I often question whether the world is that different today, given that we're now told instead that vaping is healthier than smoking. Alcohol is currently on the same trajectory as smoking. There is a widely accepted belief that alcohol is not good for you. In the United Kingdom in 2019 alone, there were 358,000 admittances to hospitals where the main reason was attributed to alcohol. That is one admittance every 1 minute and 30 seconds due to alcohol. Alcohol-related harm is estimated to cost the NHS in England £3.5 billion every year. This does not factor in the long-term side effects of drinking. Chronic alcohol consumption can lead to liver diseases such as fatty liver, alcoholic hepatitis, cirrhosis, and liver cancer. Prolonged alcohol use can impair cognitive function, memory, and concentration. It may also increase the risk of developing neurological disorders such as Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. What's more, chronic alcohol consumption can weaken the immune system, making the body more susceptible to infections. Yet still we toast with champagne to celebrate or down a pint to commiserate. In a world where we are starting to believe that health is our wealth, and we are seeing the rise of healthy eating, holidays in which we spend more time exercising than lounging around the pool. The short-term and long-term side effects of alcohol are staring us in the face. Whenever I meet someone and explain to them why I do not drink, I realize that it is not yet universally accepted that some people choose not to drink, and that we have very good reasons to do so. Suppose I sit you down and seriously talk to you about a choice you can make in your life. It's a very straightforward one, where some of the upsides include the following. 1. Physical health. Abstaining from alcohol can lead to better overall physical health, including improved liver function, reduced risk of heart disease, better sleep, and maintaining a healthy weight. 2. Mental clarity. Not drinking alcohol can help maintain clear cognitive function, sharper memory, and improved focus. 3. Emotional well-being. Avoiding alcohol can contribute to better emotional stability and mental health, reducing the risk of anxiety and depression. 4. Productivity. Abstaining can lead to increased productivity, better work performance, and the ability to pursue hobbies and interests with more dedication. 5. Improved sleep. Choosing not to drink can lead to better quality sleep, which has numerous health benefits. And to complete this, it actually saves you money. If you shared all of those benefits without mentioning alcohol, most people would be dying to know what they needed to do to obtain all these benefits. However, when you tell them, well, it's simple, just stop drinking alcohol, many people straight away refuse the deal. If I could develop this as a product, like a pill or gummy, I would become incredibly successful and rich, because these are areas in which people strive for improvement constantly. Having said that, the United Kingdom appears to be waking up to the benefits of stopping drinking, at least for a finite period of time. In 2021, an estimated 6.5 million people in the United Kingdom were reported to have participated in Dry January. Though, come the 1st of February, or even the 28th of January, our lips start to shiver and we crave the sweet nectar of booze. We once again begin the cycle that results in either Friday, Saturday, or both nights drinking and heading to nightclubs to either socialise, to avoid Ant and Dec's Saturday night takeaway, or to take the stress of the week away. As is true for most, I've been told by friends, you just need to blow off a bit of steam, just have a drink. Or, it will be okay, just have a glass of wine. Or, that calls for a glass of fizz to celebrate. Our emotional tie with alcohol is deep. 84% of men say they want to drink less, yet the global consumption average is 6.2 litres of alcohol per year. That works out as 53 bottles of wine per person per year, a bottle a week. Although males still outpace females for most alcohol-related measures, the gaps are narrowing. For cohorts born around 1990, males outnumbered females roughly 3-1 for measures of alcohol consumption. For example, prevalence, frequency, and problematic drinking. For example, binge drinking, early onset drinking. Many of these ratios are closer to 1-1 today. The reason I've shared these statistics with you is to demonstrate that, certainly in Western societies, we have deep-rooted issues with alcohol, and that even where our drinking habits might not be considered problematic or damaging in a societal context, damage can and does happen under the radar. It took me to hit rock bottom, very hard, to recognize my issues with alcohol. I want to help you spot yours long before you have to fall that far. Why me? This book isn't going to give you a high-horse opinion from someone who doesn't drink. It will give you insights into how a young man, unable to manage his emotions, stress, and strain, turned to alcohol as a coping mechanism to get through a difficult period. As the difficult period continued, the drinking got worse and worse, so much so that drinking itself became the problem. I like to think about myself as incredibly average, just a normal guy who loves football, time with friends and family. You've probably met someone like me 10 times over, and will see my traits in your peers after listening to this. What I discovered can happen to anyone as the wheel of life turns. We all need to develop outlets to manage our stress, but I've learnt that alcohol isn't a healthy outlet.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?